Hi, my name is Tony Santo and I'm a large format photographer. This video is all about going huge with your prints, utilizing the same techniques and materials that some of the biggest names on the Las Vegas Strip use. Please stay tuned for an in-depth and exclusive look at how this print was produced from start to finish, including how I scanned the film. Before we get into this video, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge my sponsors. Without them, this video would never have been produced. Michael Strickland is a phenomenal large format photographer who offers up drum scanning services. He was kind enough to donate his time and scan my 4x5 piece of film for me. MaxArt Productions was also kind enough to allow me exclusive access to a behind-the-scenes look at all of the steps that went into producing this piece. They've also provided me with all the labor hours and materials at their cost. So thank you to all of the fine folks over at MaxArt Productions for producing such a beautifully handcrafted piece. My wife absolutely loves it. Last but not least, I'd like to thank National Geographic Fine Art Galleries for providing me with a beautiful frame. Once in a while, frames do arrive damaged from the manufacturer and as such are not appropriate for paying customers. This particular frame was salvaged, but it does have some issues with the lamination peeling as well as some missing lamination in a few of the areas. There's also a corner that's not mitered properly and it's a little uneven, but nonetheless, it's still a great, beautiful frame that I was able to touch up and the artwork looks fantastic in. So thank you very much to National Geographic Fine Art Galleries for sponsoring me in this video endeavor.
The story behind this image begins on Thanksgiving Day 2013. My wife and I chose to spend the holiday exploring Organ Pipe National Monument in southern Arizona. We had the entire park to ourselves and saw some of the most incredible sunrises and sunsets we had ever witnessed.
So here's a piece of film that I'm interested in scanning. This is before I was developing my own E6 film, so it's still in its protective sleeve and I've stuck my field notes from that day right onto the sleeve. It's not actually on the film. This is 4x5 Fujifilm Velvia 100 and I shot it at its native ISO rating of 100. I used an aperture of f/64. I used my Zone 6 camera with my 90mm lens and I shot the exposure for 30 seconds. You'll also note that I used 3 GND filters, one of 0.9 plus 0.6 plus 0.3 for a total of 6 stops of light in order to cut back 6 stops of light and force the exposure to comply with the limits of Fujifilm Velvia 100. And even then, the sunspot here is a little bit bright and really pushes the limits of this film. Nonetheless, it's a fantastic image, one of my wife's favorites that I've done, and she absolutely loves it. So I'm going to surprise her and make a giant print out of it. To scan my film, I'm going to use my Epson V700. If you've ever scanned film before, you know that your greatest enemy here is really going to be dust that's going to be on the film, because then you're going to spend hours in Photoshop trying to clean all of that dust up. Unfortunately, here in Las Vegas, it seems that the minute that you dust a piece of furniture in your house, 30 seconds later, there's more dust on it. And so it's really a losing battle here in Las Vegas. But what I simply do to try and combat the dust is, on the emulsion side first, I just blow off the dust, and you could use compressed air if you like. And then I go through and use a lint cloth and run the film through the lint cloth to minimize the amount of dust that was on the film. Now, of course, just letting it sit here, there's probably a whole bunch that's going to get attracted to it. To actually scan it, what I do is I don't use any of the holders that came with my Epson. I have found through experimentation that the best way to do it for me in my setup is to take this old glass that I took out of my old scanner slash printer that is not frosted and just basically tape the piece of film to the glass. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and what I do is place it on my light box. And the reason that I do that is because there's actually a scale here so that I can align the piece of film and get it straight on the glass. so that when I put that glass on the scanner bed, because of the stops that are here on the scanner, I can push the glass up to the stops, and I know that the film's going to be straight, and therefore I don't have to spend time in Photoshop trying to straighten it out. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off the film one more time, because there is quite a bit of dust that's landed on it. And again, this is the emulsion side that I'm putting down on the glass, and I'm going to pick a spot on the glass, and I'm going to take some tape that I have here. I like this blue painter's tape because it doesn't leave any residue on the film or on my glass, so it's very, very easy to tape and reuse this tape over and over again. Now I've taped down one side, but what I'm going to do is stick it to the edge of the film first, and then pick this up, and I pull the film taut so that it doesn't bow, and most importantly, it doesn't sag onto the scanner bed glass. Now that's important because if two glossy surfaces touch one another, then you get what are called Newton rings. These are these colorful circles that will show up in your scan, and they're really difficult to remove and quite annoying to deal with. So to minimize that, you want to make sure that that piece of film never bows and touches the glass. When two glossy surfaces come together, that's when you're going to get the Newton rings. The reason why it's not happening on the emulsion side is because the emulsion side is dull, and even though this side is shiny, it doesn't create those Newton rings. So I'm going to go ahead and just put one more piece of tape down along the bottom. Got a little bit of hair on this tape. So I'll get that down, and I should be ready to go to scan that piece of film. So I'm going to try and blow off some of the dust particles that I already see that are landing on it. You may not be able to see it in the video, and then go ahead and dust the scanner bed as well. Like I said, you just do the best that you can in order to minimize dust, but inevitably there are going to be dust particles that I'm going to spend some time removing in Photoshop. Now it's important to note that when you place the glass on the scanner bed, that the shiny side should go down. So I'm pointing it downward because that's where the lens is going to read from the bottom up. And then I'm going to shut my lid, turn on my scanner, and then we can jump to that computer to get this scan going. So I've pulled up the Epson Scan software, and the first thing I'm going to do is check that all my settings are correct. And it's important to note that the mode that I'm using is professional mode, and that mode will allow you to see all of these settings. So under Original, what I'm going to look at is document type, and I want to make sure that film with film area guide is chosen since I've taped my film to the glass. The film type is positive film since I'm using Velbia 100 transparency film. Under Destination, I'm using the image type as 24-bit color. The resolution I've set to 3200 dpi, which for my scanner setup, 3200 dpi seems to be the best for sharpness as well as minimizing a large file, unnecessarily making big files if I go any more resolution-wise. As far as the document size, you'll notice that right now it's 8 by 10. That's going to change once I do a preview scan. So let's go ahead and do a preview scan and pull up the image. Okay, so the image has been scanned. You'll note that I didn't put a piece of tape at the top edge of the film, and the reason for that is that there's an area of calibration here that I try to avoid, that if you include this blue tape, it will actually throw off the calibration and you'll see these lines going through your film. So on a smaller piece of film like this, I usually don't bother with taping that because pulling the film taut on either side here really keeps that film flat. So the next thing I'm going to do is select with my marquee tool the area that I want to scan, and it's important to note that the selection of area does affect the exposure. As you can see, it changes the exposure. So I try to minimize the amount of unnecessary information. So I try to get as close to the edge of the film as possible here to get a nice clean exposure and scan. So I'm going to jump back to the document size here. You notice that the width now is set to 4.78 inches by 3.75 inches. So the next thing I want to do is just check my histogram, make sure everything is okay. And it seems like the scanner made some choices here that might be clipping some of my highlights on the right and losing some of my shadow on the left. So what I want to do is just take this triangle here and I'm going to drag that over to the very edge so that I get all the shadow detail. And then I'm going to drag my highlight triangle here all the way to the left here until it touches the edge of where that histogram is. So that includes the full range of detail here in this slide. So once I'm satisfied with that, I'm not going to monkey around with the colors here. I'll wait till Photoshop if I want to manipulate any of that stuff. So for the rest of these settings, I just leave them unchecked. I prefer to do my sharpening in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and scan the image, and that brings up the File Save Settings box. And I'm going to scan it right to my desktop. I'm going to keep that name, that's fine with me. I'm going to choose a TIFF image because I want the largest possible file that I can get and able to manipulate it in Photoshop without having to worry about compression issues. I'm going to leave all of these checked and go ahead and hit OK. And it's just a matter of sitting back and letting the image scan.
Now that I've scanned my slide film, I thought it'd be interesting to compare and contrast the flatbed and drum scan versions of my image. The image on the left is from my Epson V700 flatbed scanner, and the image on the right is the drum scan version from Michael Strickland. It is important to note that I did not make any corrections or alterations to these files. The flatbed scan is exactly how the Epson digitized the film, and the drum scan version is how I received it from Michael Strickland. The first thing I'm interested in looking at is the image size. So let's go ahead and look at the flatbed version first. I'm going to open up the image size box. We see that we have a file size of 525 megabytes just about, for 12,000 by 15,300 pixels, a document size of 40 by 51 inches at a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. The bottom line here is that there's plenty of data to make a huge print from. Let's go ahead and look at the drum scan version next. Pull up image size. We see that we have a file size of about 865 megabytes. Pixels are at 15,495 by 19,515 for a document size of about 52 inches by 65 inches at a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. So again, plenty of data for large format printing. The next thing I'd like to look at is the difference in colors in a side-by-side comparison of the images. The images look very similar. However, the drum scan is a touch warmer compared with the Epson scan. Particularly if you look at the midground, you'll notice how much cooler the flatbed scan turns out. It goes without saying that I could easily warm this image up to be in line with the drum scan or vice versa and go cooler. If I zoom in to 50%, in both these images and then move my navigator pane over the cholla cactus, what I'm seeing is that the greens in the drum scan seem to be a bit more vibrant and they stand out a little better compared with the flatbed scan. So that's kind of an interesting finding that I didn't expect either. The greens just really pop more. So now I want to look at the highlight areas and check out the area of the sun. So I'm going to move my navigator window over to the sun. Here I'm seeing a little more detail, not by much, in the flatbed scan compared with the drum scan version. That's an interesting finding, but I don't think there's going to be an appreciable difference in the final print. Let's take a look at the shadows next. So I'm just going to pull my navigator window down here to the bottom. Do the same thing for the flatbed scan version. To me, the drum scan version has a bit more detail, but the darkest areas of the shadows seem to be a bit muddy. In fact, there is a bit of reddish tint to these areas compared with the flatbed scan, but again, I don't think this is going to be significant in the final print. As far as dirt is concerned, there is just no contest here. Just move my navigator window back up to the sun area where this is most prominent. The drum scan version is just so much cleaner than the flatbed scan. I'm going to spend hours trying to clean up my version of this image, which makes me appreciate the drum scan so much more than I already do. So the next thing I'm going to do is zoom in at 100% to both of these images and move my navigator pane window to the area of the cholla cactus. So another interesting thing that I've noticed is that the drum scan version seems to have a moire pattern or some kind of artifact going on that the flatbed scan just doesn't have. I definitely didn't expect this, but again, I don't think that we're going to see this difference in the final prints, but it certainly is interesting to look at and observe. So now I'm just going to zoom out to look at the image as a whole. And just some final thoughts here. I think that both of these images are going to make beautiful, huge prints. So now it's just a matter of me trying to clean these images up for all the dirt, give them a light sharpening, and then take the files down to MaxArt Productions to make some prints.
Tony, welcome to MaxArt Productions.
Hi Becky, how's it going today?
Doing great.
Excellent.
How'd you come today?
I'm glad to be here.
Hey Tony, come on back.
Nice to see you.
As I walk down this hallway with Nick, it's hard to miss all the brilliantly colored works of Michael Goddard.
Welcome, my name's Nick Landis, president and founder of MaxArt Productions, where we strive for printing perfection. Here at MaxArt, we work with photographers and artists in collaboration to help realize their visions and dreams and make them into reality. We only use the highest quality museum-grade materials and the latest technology to produce your vision, all hand-assembled by artisans and craftsmen here in the United States.
Hi, I'm Larry Meyer, graphic designer. I prepare images for print at MaxArt Productions. Some of the images I receive are raw images that require retouching and color calibration. Some of the images I receive come in as is and are ready to go. But one of the things that we have to do here is we calibrate all of our films to a proprietary color profile. We add that to every one of the images to make sure that what I see on my screen is exactly what I'm going to see when I see it at the printer. Our images are printed on light-jet laser printers using Fujifilm and paper. One of the characteristics of Fujifilm is continuous tone. Continuous tone means no dot pattern, like you'll see on an inkjet printer. It is the industry standard for fine art gallery prints worldwide.
My name is Armando, and I'm the photo tech here at MaxArt. This here is a control strip. This is to check our chemicals, make sure they're right on the money. To check our D-Max, the low D-Max, the stain. Actually, I do this every morning to make sure all the colors are good, right. Just gonna feed it in, upside down. We just wait for wait like 5 minutes to come outside. Once again, we're checking the control strip or chemicals, make sure everything's good. A stain in the water. And last, the yellows. Okay, once again, everything's good. Our ratings. We'll check the file. our log for the whole week and back. So everything looks pretty much good. No changes. I mean, it's okay. Here we have a calibration strip, which is a grayscale balance on flex film. The first line will be the D-max. Then from there it takes from to the gray balance. We run this test or this calibration until 3 or 4 times to the computer to say so it's okay, ready to print production. Here now we're checking our film, we're calibrating to start production. We do this 4 or 5 times until the film is calibrated, ready to image. It'll take like 10 minutes each. We read all 4 lines. The machine will say, okay, continue or keep going on the calibration until it's dialed in. What we're doing here is loading up the machine. It's actually, all this is done in the dark, no light. Load it up. All this procedure is done in the dark, like loading up the film. Make sure that on the machine, the media width is set and gets loaded up real slowly. The machines are set to start working, imaging.
The film passes through the chemistry for developing and is completely dried just before it rolls out, like you see here.
We've got a couple of proofs here, right? We've got the flatbed scan on the left-hand side and the drum scan version on the right-hand side. I'm seeing a few differences here, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, Tony, I do see some differences. The sky and the cactus definitely a brighter, more warm tone there. There's also some detail I see in the drum scan that I don't see in the flatbed. Also down here in the darker tones, it seems to have a little more detail.
You're right, I agree. I really love that glow on the cholla cactus, a lot more in the drum scan compared with my flatbed version. It really pops and makes that cholla cactus stand out and make it the focal point of the image.
Yeah, it looks really good. Tony, you ready to see this big?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right.
And the moment I've been waiting for, the final full-size print.
These prints look absolutely amazing. Now, there is a difference in the ratio here. This is a 2:3 ratio, and that's a 4:5 ratio. And the reason for that is because this is going to fit into a frame that National Geographic Fine Art Galleries gave me. So that frame already had a liner that was set for 2:3. So that's the reason why there's a size difference here. But other than that, what do you think about these prints? How did we do here?
Well, as we suspected, you know, the same difference in color we see in this one over here from the drum scan. It's a little bit brighter, warmer. There's a little more detail to it than what we're seeing in the flatbed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a nice quality about that warm tone in this image versus that image there.
Yeah, great, Tony. Are you ready to assign a number of them and we'll get them to lamination?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
After careful consideration of the prints, I decided to mount the drum scan version because of the added warmth and significant difference in overall sharpness. Going forward, there's no question in my mind that making large prints benefit greatly from drum scanning the film.
Now we're going to spec this. Here I'm doing the inspection for any scratches, lines on the images. Make sure everything's good. Okay, that looks good.
Okay, so now it's time to sign the piece, and this is the most nerve-wracking part of it because I want to get this just right. Good news is that Flex Film will allow you to use an alcohol wipe, and you can wipe off your signature. So I'm going to try a white Sharpie here and see how that looks, and if we don't like it, then we'll move on to a different color. All right, here it goes. Well, I think I like how that turned out. Okay, so now I'm going to move down to the lower left-hand corner, and Armando is going to show us how he uses this grid here to put the placement of the signature and the other information that goes on the print. I've decided that I'm going to put HC, which is an abbreviation for a French term, or commerce. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Right here.
So it needs to go in this area. So he's just used the grid to give me the precise location of where I should put that HC. So now I've got HC in the left-hand corner and my signature on the lower right-hand corner.
My name is Nicolai Lima. I work for Max Production. My work is lamination, signature, and mounting.
Carla begins the lamination process by cleaning the film with 99% isopropyl alcohol to ensure good adhesion and that the print is particulate-free.
Derek Rodriguez, I'm the lead CNC machinist here at MaxArt Pro. And basically what I do is have pieces come to me, and anything that needs to be routed out, essentially any material, any substrate, we go ahead and get that done before we send the piece off to our framing department, and they get the piece looking sharp for you guys.
Hey Derek, will you sign my baseball?
Hey, no problem, Tony.
Two interesting facts about Derek are that he is a retired Major League Baseball player and he enjoys creating pieces of artwork in his spare time. Prior to operating the CNC router, Derek aligns the piece on the platform to ensure that the proper amount of material will be removed and that the final piece will be precisely sized to 1.5 by 1.0 meters. He also calibrates the router to the proper cutting depth using the block you see here.
Hi guys, my name is Brandon. I work at MaxArt Productions, and here at MaxArt Productions I frame up all the artwork and I pack up all the pieces when they're ready to go.
Brandon begins the framing process by removing the acrylic protective layer and using compressed air to blow any particulates off of the piece. The liner of the frame is coated with a thin piece of double-sided adhesive tape so that when the piece is dropped into the frame, it forms one of the many bonds between the artwork and the frame.
So right now, I'm gonna peel this off so we can put the killer red tape on the back so we can attach our white Sentra.
Brandon applies double-sided tape to the outer edges of the piece. Larger strips of adhesive tape are also applied through the middle of the piece with rubber squeegees. Once he peels back the covering for the adhesive tape, a white panel is hand-pressed into place. This is followed by covering the seams with tape where the piece mates the liner. The layering continues with the application of more adhesive tape and foam core. And yes, this is followed by yet another layer of adhesive tape and foam core. The seams are all sealed with more tape. The last layer to be applied that serves to functionally lock the piece into place so that it doesn't bow or shift is this black panel that you see Brandon attaching here. He staples the panel into place, tapes the seams, and wipes it down clean. The last part of the layering process is the application of a tough cloth liner to give the rear side of the frame a clean and professional appearance. This involves several applications of double-sided tape and lots of patience. As Brandon pulls the fabric taut, he uses a roller to apply direct pressure on the areas where the adhesive tape was applied. He trims the excess with a very sharp blade for a custom fit. Since this piece is extremely heavy, Brandon is installing a gallery rail system. He measures the precise location of the top rail using a jig for faster installation and affixes the rail to the frame using screws. The bottom rail is measured to the specs of the top rail and is cut down for a proper fit. Brandon uses tape to secure the rail during transportation. Once the piece is flipped over, Brandon blows away any dust and wipes the piece down. Here you see Brandon and Nacho placing a protective layer of plastic on the acrylic. Each customer receives a pair of white gloves to wear when handling the artwork to eliminate fingerprints being placed on the piece, which can be difficult to remove. The last step is to wrap the piece up and place it in a box for shipping. Since I live in Las Vegas, I opted to transport the piece home myself. As you can see, this is a laborious process involving many individuals and took almost a full day's worth of labor.
To secure the piece to the wall, I've gone ahead and installed one half of a gallery rail with screws tied into the studs. The other half's located on the back of the frame and will fit right into this groove and make a tight fit so that there's no risk that the piece is going to fall forward and possibly injure somebody. As an alternative to traditional framing, I could have opted for what's referred to as a recess mount frame, and that's simply a frame that sits behind the print, as you see in this example. Now, one of the benefits to this kind of framing is the fact that it allows the print to sit off the wall so that it creates a little bit of a shadow area for a different kind of look. Now, one of the most important things that you may have noticed that I've been doing in handling this print is the use of gloves. And that's important to remember because acrylic is very susceptible to scratching and damage. And even the finest of scratches may not be removed with the best compounds that are out there. So you want to be careful when handling this print. For routine maintenance, I recommend some form of compressed air to simply blow off all the dust on the print. Now, if you happen to get any oils from your skin on the print, or there's some stubborn stains, the best thing to do at that point is to take a lint-free cloth or lint-free paper towel and douse it with 99% isopropyl alcohol, and then very gently try and remove that stubborn stain. If you've watched this video from start to finish, hopefully you've gained a sense of appreciation for all of the hard work and labor hours that go in to making a fine art piece just like this one. If you have any drum scanning needs, please consider Michael Strickland for your drum scanning needs, as he did a wonderful job on this piece. And if you're interested in producing a piece just like this, utilizing these same exact materials, please contact MaxArt Productions. I'll leave their information below in the notes. And on a last note, if you are interested in National Geographic photography, please stop by if you're in the Las Vegas area or one of the many locations throughout the United States at one of the galleries and check out all of the beautiful fine art prints that National Geographic photographers have to offer us. As always, thank you for watching this video.